Good afternoon and welcome to UK Column Live from our studio in Plymouth, England. I'm your host today, Brian Gerrish, and with me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Monday, the 8th of October 2012 already. My goodness, how the time is whistling by. And I'm very sad to say the weather outside is pretty unpleasant. It's raining and our forecast is for more of the same. Now, today's programme, we are going to focus on deeply disturbing subject of child abuse, and we're going to have an extended news programme today on this subject, as it appears to the UK column staff and many other people who've been looking at what's been happening in UK that something very dark and sinister is going on. We've got the background of the abuse into the BBC sex ring around Jimmy Savile. We've had the recent exposure of the Rochdale paedophile rings. We've had the tragic case of the abuse of the young Down syndrome girl Holly Gregg. And I'll point out to viewers and listeners that Anne and Holly were at the High Court on Friday. Some extraordinary events took place around that hearing. Essentially, there is still a massive attempt by the establishment to close down any reporting on the abuse of Holly Gregg. But the reason for our focus on this issue today is that the UK column has been covering an extraordinary story based in Oxfordshire, around Oxford and Cherwell Valley College. And we felt compelled to bring this matter fully into the public domain, not only by making it front page of the UK column, but also bringing you this extended programme today. Just what is going on in this country, and why is there such a divide over those that the state is prepared to expose and those that the British state appears to want to cover up for. So if we just have a look at our front page, we've got a picture of a gentleman. We cannot give you his name at the moment for his own protection, but this extraordinary man we've labelled as a Good Samaritan because single-handedly over a little over a year, 18 months, this gentleman has been trying to protect white youngsters from white abusers in activities going on in and around Oxford and Cherwell Valley College. Now, what has happened to this man is not that he's had every support and encouragement from all the child protection teams. In fact, the opposite has taken place, that he has been bullied and victimised for speaking out. Now, most of the information we're giving you today has come from research from the UK column's own research teams, or it's come from the reports from students who've come to the UK column to talk about what's going on. So pretty serious stuff, Mike.
Yeah, so we know of this guy from the students? Yeah,
the students have basically been talking to us about abuse at the college. They've made some extremely serious allegations. As usual, we've looked at the evidence, we've met student victims, we've looked at their witness statements, and we've looked at historical correspondence. So we'll reassure viewers and listeners today that we're giving you this programme with detail. And over the last year, it's over a year now, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've been looking at this particular case. We've been looking at it in great detail. So we'll come back to this very brave gentleman, the Good Samaritan. But of course, it won't have escaped viewers' notice that he is of Asian origin, and yet he has been doing his best to protect white youngsters from the unwanted attention of some pretty foul white abusers, and we regard this as being very significant. But if we go back to the start of this story for the UK column, we first published about a year ago, and we just call up that first article. It was very simple. We reported that there were accusations of student abuse and a cover-up over child pornography at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College. And this was part of the article with the chief executive of the college, Sally Dicketts, is the lady in the photograph. But we produced a fairly short but factual article where we recounted the statements, accusations and allegations being made by the students.
And she's chief executive, principal?
Principal is the correct term, yeah. And what was extraordinary is that within a matter of hours of having published that article, OCVC responded, and I'll come on to that in just a second. But what sort of things were the students saying? Well, one of the young men who came forward, Daniel Arnold, was brave enough to have his photograph taken. Here he is in the picture, and actually he's holding out a letter which he'd sent to his local Oxford East MP, Andrew Smith, in which he was asking for help in dealing not only what had happened to him, but what the abuses that had also been taking place around other students. And so in that particular article, we put quite a lot of detail about not only what Daniel was reporting, but of course what the allegations were from other children.
I think it's fair to say there's some allegations that we haven't published.
Well, indeed, at the moment we have a lot of information which we have felt unable to publish in order to protect the students themselves.
But also there's some severity to some of the allegations that, frankly, we wouldn't want to bring into the public domain at this point.
Well, this is absolutely true. If we put this in context, we're not simply talking about students who've suffered from physical and sexual abuse. We're also talking about students who have been damaged, traumatically damaged, by viewing material which is so vile it's actually caused them mental problems. And what we are talking about is not only child pornography, but also extremely vicious and unpleasant films involving young children, people and animals, some of it filmed overseas, we believe, in Afghanistan. So what was incredible for the UK column when the first whistleblowers started to come forward, those first students, was that they were not talking about perhaps some more general pornography being circulated. They were immediately talking about extremely serious material. Some of the students are still damaged by the material which they viewed. So Daniel Arnold contacted his MP. This is after the fact that essentially all the students are reporting to us the same thing, that although they came forward to make witness statements, although there are a number of students, we're not talking one or two, we're talking multiple numbers, although they came forward and gave their evidence, they all report that essentially Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, with the help of others, and that includes Oxfordshire County Council and the Safeguarding Board and the police, those concerns and attempts to report what were going on were squashed. And I'm going to put up a photograph here of Oxford East MP Andrew Smith. This was the gentleman who was approached by Daniel Arnold asking for help. Now we know this MP wrote a wrote a letter to Thames Valley Police, but after that the trail goes cold, as is usual with this case around Oxford and Cherwell Valley College. So even though there are multiple students coming forward talking about material they've seen, talking about being abused, seeing others abused, they're even talking about racial abuse, no cohesive investigation has actually been carried out into the matters in the college. And this MP, unfortunately, either seems too busy to have really got into the details of what's happening, or perhaps this is another case of the establishment simply not wanting to know. This is one of two pieces of evidence which we're going to put up on screen. This is a letter obviously written relatively recently in relation to when events took place. The trouble started to be reported around about 2010. So this is a recent letter from one of the parents of a student who was attempting to get the college to actually pay attention to what their child was describing. If I just read this out, it's a little bit probably difficult for viewers to read. Dear Mrs. Dicketts, on the 16th of February, I received a phone call from a secretary at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College on behalf of Mr. John Guyver. I cannot recall the name of this person. It was regarding my son, and the name we've redacted. The conversation and reasons for calling were not made very clear, other than I needed to write to Mr. John Guyver concerning my child remaining at the college. As you are aware, complaints have been made by the child about the misconduct and child protection matters concerning Mr. John Guyver that affects my son's welfare and safeguarding. I thought that the suggestion demand put to me by your secretary was not only bizarre, but was also outrageous given the circumstances surrounding Mr. Guyver relating to child protection matters that directly affect my child. So that's a very, very explicit letter, and the frustration is clear to see in there, because this is not the first letter in the series. This is a recent letter where there has been a major attempt by students who are now over 18 and their parents to actually bring matters into the public domain. If we follow that up with a second one, this is all even more explicit. It was sent to the college in 2008. It's handwritten by a student. The images that are being shown by Andy's friends are quite worrying. As Steve Capewell knows, it's not normal porn, it's child porn that's being shown. I'll come back to the red circled areas in a second. The complaints that Steve have received about the person showing child abuse videos in class and being shown around with the other tutors, being shared around with the other tutors. A person has complained to Steve with other students and has made written complaints with them. Something needs to be done about this, as I can't handle this anymore. And that is a letter from one of the students, just one of the students, and the pattern is very, very clear. All of these young people are reporting about sexual abuse or physical abuse. They're being physically assaulted, and they are consistently talking about pornographic material and very unpleasant pornographic material being circulated in the college. But nothing actually seems to happen. Now I've highlighted, if we can just bring that one back up, Mike, highlighted here that the student is mentioning a gentleman called Steve Capewell. Now we're not saying that Mr. Capewell has done anything wrong, we're simply pointing out that at the time the student wrote the letter, he was aware that he was referring to the correct person. In this slide we can show that this is an internal Oxford and Cherwell Valley College safeguarding poster, and on it, and I've ringed it on screen, is Steve Capewell.
So, I mean, you say that we're not saying he has done anything wrong, but actually, at the very least, he is one of the people on this poster as being responsible for looking after and safeguarding children, and he has done nothing about the allegations that were brought to him. Is that a fair comment?
Well, I think I think what would be better is to say that from the information that's held by the UK column at the moment, and from the statements that we hold from students, that it does not appear clear that he took sufficient action. We know that some action was taken, because certainly there were meetings, but the key point is that despite students going to this man in his capacity with a safeguarding role, that what we don't get is a clear direction in how they dealt with the accusations being made by the children. So whether it's Mr. Capewell's fault or whether in fact the problem started above him is not clear at the moment.
I mean, on that poster, you have highlighted Steve Capewell because he's mentioned in the letter.
Yes.
But these other people also have responsibility. So how do you regard their position in this?
Well, we have to say at the moment that we don't know, but one of the issues that we're going to come on to a little bit later in this special report is the fact that very often we see that there are a large number of people working in partnership. So we're not dealing with one or two people who have responsibility for a particular issue, in this case child protection and safeguarding. We see that there will be a club of 20 people, and then we start to actually have a look at conflict of interest, that people who should be taking a detached position are actually caught up in the same organisation. So to be correct and to be accurate in our reporting, all we are simply saying at this stage is that we have at least one student, well in fact we have more, who says that who say that they made the correct reports alerting Steve Capewell to what was happening.
Yeah.
And at the moment there is no evidence in the public domain that the correct action was taken.
Right.
And we're going to talk about one particular report in a minute. So really, having reported what was going on, the amazing thing from the college was the reaction. And we come back to those early days. We write an article where we're saying that students are reporting serious abuse going on at a college, and the first call we receive from the college is one which basically threatens us. And of course you took the call, Mike.
Well, I took that call, and Ms. Wilstead's attitude was very much confrontational. She was requiring that we take everything that we'd published down immediately, and was also, I think, fishing for information, because she wanted to know where we got the information that we had published. And she definitely appeared to be quite distressed when we explained that we weren't taking it down, because we viewed that the article was in the public interest, number one, and also we had multiple sources for our information
from the students.
From the students,
yeah.
So we were not relying on a single individual. This was we had already at that stage a number of people had come forward, and so in fact at the end of the day, although Ms. Wilstead was very keen that the information was taken off the website, yeah. She, I think, went away realizing that there was actually nothing that they could do about it, because we had such solid evidence.
Yeah, well, I brought up here, which we can bring up now on screen, what she actually said to us. So it was a call at 9:30 on the 5th of December 2011, and Miss Wilstead stated that everything contained within that article, and that was the UK column's first report on OCVC, is a complete fabrication, and I would like you to remove it with immediate effect. You are advised, therefore, that there will be action taken. So this was a very clear threat from the college, wasn't it? That basically legal action would be taken against us unless the article was taken down off the web.
Indeed, and of course, nothing happened.
Yeah.
That seems to say something, doesn't it?
Well, the key bit which Mike is bringing across, and I remember this very well myself, is the fact that at that time the college seemed to believe that when we were reporting these matters, we were only doing it on the basis of one individual. And we're going to explain a little bit more of this has come out of the woodwork as this case has gone on. But in fact, from the very start, we were confident as to what we were reporting, because it wasn't one or two, but there were multiple students who were coming forward to tell their stories. And of course, at the time the abuses were conducted, those youngsters were under 18. Now they're coming forward as adults. And I have to say the courage amongst these young people is absolutely incredible, because they've already suffered the situation where basically none of the people that they've gone to in positions of authority, who should be there to protect youngsters from abuse, none of those people have really done their job.
Including the police?
Including the police, yeah. So We are threatened that basically we should take this material down, and that everything we've said is a complete fabrication. That's what the lady said to us. And this makes the report in the Oxford Mail from Thursday, the 11th of February 2010, very pertinent. I'm going to read this, obviously a little bit small on screen. College teacher showed porn to pupils. A teacher has been suspended from an Oxford college following allegations pupils were shown pornographic images on a mobile phone. Oxford and Cherwell Valley College last night confirmed the staff member who worked at the Blackbird Leys campus in Cuddesdon Way was suspended before Christmas, and an investigation into the claims was ongoing. Police said a full investigation had been carried out and no police action would be taken. Anne Woolstead, the college's head of marketing, said, "I cannot divulge any details of the investigation until it has been completed. We're liaising with the relevant agencies. We're taking these allegations very seriously, and we want to encourage any parent who is concerned to contact the college directly so we can alleviate their concerns." Miss Woolstead said the allegations were 2 months old and the teacher concerned was suspended before Christmas. A spokesman for the County Council's Education Safeguarding Team said, "An internal investigation is ongoing. We are unable to comment further at this time." So that was a pretty comprehensive report that there had been child abuses going on inside the college. And we can now report that the teacher concerned was indeed sacked or let go from the college, but surprisingly without any proper reporting through the police. So the individual concerned is still working with youngsters at another educational establishment. The other thing that we are fully aware of now is, of course, that a full investigation did not take place. And one of the key issues was to do with the fact that students reported that it wasn't just pornographic material being shown on mobile phones. The material was also being shown and passed around on the college's network computer system. And it appears to be highly significant that at a particular time, and the UK column has reported on this in detail in the articles we've written, the college put out a contract to actually remove and replace all of the computers inside the college campus. So not only did Thames Valley Police not fully investigate, it's now emerged that the person that was used to actually check their computers was somebody employed at the college themselves, and that no full and proper police forensic investigation was conducted into those computers.
It is staggering that anybody that has lost their job at a college for this kind of behaviour is still working in the teaching profession.
Yes, but in fact we're finding that this is appears to be a common thread now across the education sector, that where there are embarrassing internal issues such as pornography, staff are let go, very often with a cash payment but with a gagging order in place, so that of course there's no trail for the public on what's actually happening inside the school or the college itself.
I see, so this is a compromise agreement?
Absolutely, and I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but I believe I'm correct in saying that in a relatively short space of time, Oxford and Cherwell Valley College has spent over £200,000 on compromise agreements. But of course the public is denied any background into what abuses or activities or crimes have been carried out by the staff that have been let go. But as you say, it's highly significant that somebody who has been showing pornographic images should be allowed to slip away to work at another venue. But in fact it's emerged in the last few weeks that the gentleman concerned was not just showing pornographic images. He was actually removed for exposing himself to those young students. And the detail around these abuses, again, has been totally withheld not only from senior people in Oxfordshire safeguarding, but also, of course, from parents and the general public. So I'll just bring us on to this gentleman here. The college, of course, has consistently claimed that there was an investigation, and that investigation centres around this gentleman called Ray Tregear. Now, he was brought in from FE Associates, which is a consultancy that provides consulting expertise to the education sector, and that's on quite a broad scale. But what is very clear is that at the time he was used to investigate the initial reports from students on abuse, that he was totally unqualified to do so, in that he was not a child abuse specialist. He held no expertise or historical expertise into these kind of investigations. So it would appear remarkable that this gentleman was introduced into the college to do an investigation without any form of proper qualification.
I would have said that under these circumstances, the very least that should have happened is that a computer forensics company, an established computer forensics consultancy with a good track record, should have been brought in to identify what was on the hard drives of these computers and who had put it there. Yeah.
Well, of course, in some of the documents that we hold and in some of the discussions we've held with victims, this gentleman appeared to be very hostile in his approach to those coming forward. And of course, that is in total contradiction to the way that people who've been abused should be treated, where they need to be encouraged and reassured in order to get the full truth out. But we understand that this gentleman was introduced into the Oxford and Cherwell Valley College scandal, as I'm now going to call it, by Oxfordshire Safeguarding Board. So this is the very organisation which should have actually been at the forefront of saying, well, what is actually going on in Oxford and Cherwell Valley College? Who are we going to get in? They don't get in amongst the investigation themselves, but they bring in this consultant. So once again, we are not saying that Mr. Ray Tregear did something wrong. What we are saying is that he was brought in, and the evidence certainly shows us that he was unsuitable to do the job which he was asked to do. And why was that? Now, if we set a bit of background to Oxford at the moment, over recent months we've seen a lot of publicity about Operation Bullfinch, and this was Thames Valley Police who were rounding up a paedophile gang, which was, at the time it was reported, was over 18 men, many of them of Asian or Muslim origin. And this became an absolute major report, both in the local media and indeed national media. But some of the things that weren't reported quite as widespread concerned the fact that a part of the hearings revolved around a gentleman who was never identified. And there's some really excellent reporting by the Oxford Mail here. So I'll just read through this. The Oxford Mail and the Oxford Times has been gagged from reporting details of a hearing involving an Oxford businessman which took place in a neighbouring courtroom. The hearing was held at High Wycombe Magistrates Court at the same time as the 6 men accused of being part of the alleged paedophile ring. The Oxford Mail believes the hearing is linked. I'm sorry, I've just missed that. I'll just have to recap on that. The Oxford Mail believes the hearing is linked to the Operation Bullfinch investigation, but the man at the centre of it, who is in his mid-30s, is not one of the 6 charged. District Judge Andrew Vickers prevented details of the hearing being reported unless the man is charged and appeared at court. He passed rulings under the Contempt of Court Act to stop any publication and to prevent the man's name and address being revealed in connection with the hearing. This came after it was argued by police that any press report could hamper their investigation. But the judge then took the unusual step of holding the hearing in camera, which means press and public are excluded, forcing our reporter to leave the courtroom. The judge ruled the investigation could be jeopardised if the hearing was not held behind closed doors. The paper went on in the editorial to comment further. It's talking about parents want reassurance. And this was to do with the emergence of cases of abuse coming out in schools. It wasn't only in Oxford, but it was in other parts of UK. So their comment was, the number of crimes reported on school grounds will worry parents as much as they clearly worry head teachers. It is important to stress these are reported crimes and it's unclear how many were substantiated. However, they give an indication of the scale of the issue. Chief Superintendent Tim de Meyer says details of crimes should be made public on a case-by-case basis, but what parents will want is reassurance that crimes are being investigated and dealt with. Now, this was a very important comment by the Oxford Mail, because of course with regard to Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, it has been consistently clear that the reported abuse allegations have not been fully investigated. And this doesn't matter whether it has been around one individual who's had particularly strong evidence or has been a result of the evidence of numerous students. And in some of the cases that the UK column have seen, students are able to corroborate each other's stories in naming individuals, in describing the type of the abuse.
Just before we move on, can we go back to that? Don't need to go back to the previous slide, but this case that was held in camera, what more do we know about that?
Well, at the moment the trail has absolutely gone cold on that.
But there was some discussion at the time about this being a non-Muslim member of the gang, perhaps the person who was providing the children to the gang. Is that?
Well, this is quite true. We're moving on to this area because, having said that our investigations initially started out with student reports, what we didn't know in the beginning was that there was actually a member of staff from Oxford and Cherwell Valley College who had come forward not only to try and help the youngsters, but actually to take the case forward to get the abuses in the college properly dealt with and exposed. And that gentleman is the man we showed at the start of the programme, and of course he's of Asian origin. And what interests us is that there has been an absolutely massive splash of publicity, not only in Oxford but also nationally, over the fact that the paedophiles that Thames Valley Police picked up were of Asian origin. But we've got this individual who has been protected in a secret court. We don't know at the moment what nationality that person is or ethnicity. But at the same time, what we do now know is that an extremely brave Asian gentleman who was working at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College stepped forward in order to protect the children from not only the pornography but physical and sexual abuse. And from what those youngsters are telling us, he has been absolutely hounded and victimised since. Now, why is this? Is it because he's Asian and the political agenda at the moment is to try and brand all paedophiles as being Asian? So this man stands up for white children against white abusers, and not only does nobody pay attention to what he's talking about, he's hounded and vilified. It's quite an incredible part of the case. If we have a look as to how this sort of problem can arise, this slide on screen really shows it all. I know the writing's extremely small, but this is a list of names from Oxfordshire Safeguarding Children Board, and it's taken from the minutes of a meeting held on the 1st of September 2011, and anybody can go on the internet and search for those minutes and you'll get exactly the same document. But we have a huge spread of people from a number of different organisations who are all supposedly working together to protect children. So we've got the independent chair, Andrea Hickman, we've got the county solicitor, we've got Young People and Access to Education, we've got the Primary Care Trust, we've got Connections, we've got another college, we've got the NHS, Oxfordshire County Council, Radcliffe Hospitals, District Council, lay members, and significantly I think we've also got, and we just ring them so that you can see, we've actually got Thames Valley Police themselves sitting in on this Child Safeguarding Board. So the first person I've highlighted is Amanda Pearson, who's a superintendent, Oxford LPA Commander, Thames Valley Police. And the second one down here is another lady, Michelle Dillon, Detective Inspector with Thames Valley Police. Now, it's of interest, as a minimum, to say that the second lady was actually involved in investigating, or supposedly investigating, the original abuses. And we have students that are saying to us that the manner in which she conducted the investigations seems very strange, because the allegations the youngsters are making is that they were taken off for a ride in a car on their own. They were not questioned in a proper formal surrounding with a parent or guardian present. So at the moment we haven't quite got to the bottom of what Thames Valley Police have been doing in this investigation, but certainly it appears that they're very close to the Safeguarding Board and rather more distant to the young victims that have sought help.
And we are aware of other police interviews that have been held in incorrect circumstances, are we not?
Well, that's absolutely correct. I'll just call up some more names here, okay, because the list that we had on screen was not comprehensive. This is the apologies, goodbyes and welcomes for the meeting that we've just seen. So there are a whole host of other people who are normally present in these Child Safeguarding Board meetings. So we've got Children's Social Care, but we've also got people like Jim Levers, who Interim Deputy Director of Children's Social Care. We've got CAFCAS, we've got Child Mental Health. So a lot of people involved in these meetings. And if we just focus on Jim Levers, as the man at the top of Oxfordshire's Children's Social Care and Safeguarding, he sent out an email a little while ago in which he said this: "From the investigations undertaken and from the subsequent information provided to the County Council following these investigations, I can confirm that the vast majority of the allegations have not been substantiated. I would also confirm that where any of the allegations have been substantiated, action has been taken to address this matter." Now, this theme that the reporting by the UK column is inaccurate is a consistent one for Mr. Levers. He said in an earlier email, "I should point out that none of the very serious allegations reported in the UK column have been substantiated, and the ones over which action has been taken were not linked to serious harm to children or young people." So that's a pretty comprehensive attack on the UK column, but we think listeners and viewers will be interested in the fact that Mr. Levers had personally been in receipt of a witness statement detailing targeted physical and sexual abuse from one victim. That person thought they would be raped. This was originally sent to Oxfordshire County Council in April 2008. And despite receiving the same complaint again early in May 2012 and 2 hastening letters because he didn't respond, Levers only actually responded some 4 months later. So remember that we are dealing with serious sexual and physical assault of young people. We're dealing with child pornography. We're dealing with extremely unpleasant material. But Mr. Levers takes 4 months to respond, and he only did so after a complaint had been made to the local government ombudsman in August 2012. And we know from seeing the response that he's given that once again, his reply contained false or misleading information. Now, was this because he himself didn't know the facts, or was it because basically he was deliberately trying to mislead the public? And of course, we'll come back to this business that when parents and the public are told there was an investigation, of course the investigation was carried out initially by Mr. Ray Tregear, who was unqualified, and parents and the public have never had sight of the report that he produced. So that has been kept either simply within Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, or it has been kept under wraps within Oxfordshire Safeguarding Board itself, which is a fairly interesting situation. Where have we seen it before? Well, Rochdale is the answer.
This whole there's no separation of powers here with the Child Safeguarding Board.
Yeah.
And this whole sort of we investigate ourselves to see how good a job we're doing at investigating the allegations. It's got shades of Holly. It's got shades of Rochdale. There are so many cases coming out now with this same kind of non-investigation.
Yeah, if you don't investigate, there is no crime. And of course, we've seen now in stark truth what happened in Hillsborough, that when the police felt it necessary to cover up for their own failings, they were prepared to lie, falsify witness statements, including from policemen. So the precedent is there, and we've also got this case in Rochdale where people have made literally hundreds of reports to local authorities about children being at risk from abuse and from paedophile gangs, and it was simply ignored time after time. And once again in Rochdale, although we've got the situation that the head of Children's Services has stood down, nobody in the public sector is actually being brought to account and put in court and tried for misfeasance or malfeasance in public office. So all that we are seeing is that these failures, which are resulting in Rochdale, the most obscene abuse of young children, was simply ignored, and by the very people who should have been protecting the children, and those individuals have got away scot-free. The parallel with Oxford and Cherwell Valley College actually seems quite remarkable.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thread, of course, is that if we look at the Rochdale, if we look at events around Rochdale, once again we see that the mainstream media have been heavily focusing on the fact that the abuse gangs were Asian, and a great deal has been made of the fact that the paedophiles, the abusers, are Asian, Asian men, Asian. But when we come to Oxford Valley, and Thames Valley Police are presented with evidence which has come not only from multiple white youngsters who are talking about being abused by white men, and as we now know, when an Asian gentleman comes forward in order to support the accusations of the children and to try and get his employer to take the correct action, what happens is this gentleman is vilified. And it's extraordinary. Is it an accident? Is it a coincidence that we have in Thames Valley an Asian gentleman just being simply dismissed? Well, it's worse than that because he lost his job.
I think what we're saying generally is, if we set aside Jimmy Savile, because that's one case in order to, as I said last week, I think that's in order to enrage people generally on this issue. Yeah. But if we look at the main focus of the police activity around the country at the moment, it's on Asian paedophile rings. Now, these paedophile rings have been in operation for a long time, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it's now that these issues are being raised in the public domain. Yeah. As we said in the newspaper, it's not just Asian gangs, it's white gangs as well. So there are two questions to be asked here. One is there a political agenda at work here to set communities against each other. But I think it's also very important to say that we're not suggesting that there's a racial issue behind these prosecutions. I mean, this gang
were abusers.
Were abusers.
Yeah,
Same
absolutely.
in Oxford. We're not suggesting that there's some kind of racial thing going on here, other than to say that it's not just Asian gangs, it's also white gangs, and that the political agenda seems to be to set communities against each other.
Yeah, and of course the other thing that is such a key point in these cases, and police officers who are interested in the information that we hold, what they are telling us is, of course, that that this type of child abuse is not simply something which goes on at the lowest level of society. The people who are heavily involved in it and have the money to be involved in it are people at the higher ends of the social class. So it does seem extremely strange at the moment that for whatever reason Thames Valley Police do not want to get involved in fully investigating, even though in this case in Oxford there are multiple witnesses, there are multiple statements, there's corroborating evidence, and as we've now come to discover, we've actually got a member of staff that did come forward at Oxford and Cherwell Valley to do the right thing. Well, this lady must be the key lady to focus on. This is Sarah Thornton, the Chief Constable of Thames Valley Police. Now, we don't exactly know how much she's known about what and has not gone on at the college, but what must certainly be true is that as the Chief Constable, she holds responsibility for the Operation Bullfinch investigation into paedophile activity in the Oxford area, so she must be fully informed by her team. And of course the UK column reports themselves have fully brought home in Oxford that students have been coming forward to say that not only were they abused, but this absolutely vile child pornography was circulating at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College. There are some links between the police and the college, which many people might find disturbing because it tends to break down the independence of the police, but whether or not those links have had any impact on the case, we don't know. Some students are alleging that one of the abusers later went on to become a policeman within Thames Valley Police Force. So whether that is something that the police feel particularly sensitive about, we don't know. As we come towards the last couple of minutes, let's get up the man here who really deserves our support. We'd like to be able to name him, but we can't at the moment. We'll leave him as a good Samaritan, but this is the man who for over a year has endured the most extraordinary abuse and harassment. He's been followed, photographed, and we understand that at the moment an employment tribunal is taking place. He no longer has a job. We understand from an undercover reporter that already in the tribunal this man is being made out to be the villain and not a victim and an upstanding member of society. So we're going to leave viewers and listeners with the question, what is it that's going on at Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, which means that foul material can be shown, multiple students can report what is happening, they can have the support of a member of staff in their stories, but no full action in child safeguarding is taking place. If you feel concerned, you might like to get in contact with Oxfordshire Safeguarding Children's Board on 01865 810 628, 01865 810 628, or the email as on screen. Alternatively, you might like to contact Thames Valley Police direct, and that is on 01865 841 148. And of course you can always email either of those two organisations with your concerns. Thank you very much for joining UK Column Live. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Thank you.